turf is only as good as the foundation that's underneath it. So when we take out and excavate that 4 inches out of the existing grass, and then we're going to come in with a couple inches of 2B stone, real good drainage stone, and then we're going to come on the top with a 3/8 minus sub base that goes on top of there. The sub base is very, very important. Again, the turf is only as good as the construction that's underneath there. So if you don't have a real good compacted foundation, the turf you'll see all kinds of different dips and different things with that turf. So the foundation has to be good. You need 95% compaction on that sub base, that stone and that sub base that we're bringing in.
You mentioned that base that you put under.
Yeah.
It's like a recycled asphalt.
It's recycled concrete.
Okay.
You can either get it in a clean version, which is a 3/4 rock,
Yeah.
or you can get it in a recycled version. And so the majority are using the recycled version.
So is it like a 3/4 minus? So it's
Yeah.
just crumbled. So
It's all mixed.
would that be better to use?
I like
than
it.
This?
Yeah, because if you get a lot of moisture or rainfall, and then you walk on this, you can leave a divot of your foot imprint. Whereas if you do a class 2 base, you walk on it, it's still hard as rock because it's got a better drainage rate. DG doesn't drain as quickly as class 2.
The pavers, you want that 1 inch, sort of a cushion almost, right? With the sand. With here you don't want that.
Yeah.
Because as you walk on it,
Yeah.
it's going to migrate out.
Okay.
With the pavers, you're standing on it, and the pavers set a 1/4 inch as soon as you compact it, and then it's not going to move anymore. So it's a little bit different with this product. But here we're finding that hardly anybody's using the 3/4 crushed rock.
I've never
DAB.
seen anyone either.
So it's different for different areas.
What
Yeah.
about a rolling turf area? Like you have a little.
Yeah,
mound?
so I love doing our class 2 base because when you excavate, you can fill up the void. You'd have to use twice as much DG versus a class 2 base because it's a 3/4 rock. So you can fill up your area really nice with your class 2 base. Smooth it out, compact it. It's harder to level because you're dealing with a
Yeah.
bigger rock.
That's what I was.
So, but you got a lot of fines in there too. So you can sweep that out real nice, compact it, and when you wet it, it just gets hard as a rock. And then you come in with your DG and you do your sculpting with your DG. So putting greens are the same way. You get that base in there that when it does get saturated, it still is firm. Because with the putting green, if you walked on it after it rained and you just went DG, you can get foot imprints and then you got to rip the whole thing out and redo it.
What are we talking about as far as depth? Yeah.
2 to 4 inches on the class 2, and then an inch of DG.
Every roll that we do comes with this cautionary sticker, which basically is open up the roll, look at it, make sure there's nothing wrong with it. You know, whether we try as much as we can to QC everything, but just to make sure there's no issues with the product. It hasn't been damaged in delivery or something like that. We want you to double check it before installing it, because if there is something wrong, we can probably get you another piece cut pretty quick and not delay the project.
Follow the action.
Have you spend a bunch of time installing it and then have to take it back out.
Okay, so we're trying to eliminate that angle of the blade of grass that's turned to the side. It's not a defect in the turf. It's just when they're rolled up and they've been sitting on the rack for a while, the blades turn to the side. So we're trying to get to the blades that are laying nice and flat. My rule of thumb that I've seen is to cut in about 3 to 4 lines. So we do lose a little bit of the 15-foot width, so we have to take into consideration that. So I'm going to cut in 4 because this is a very prominent seam that we're going to be seeing most likely. So I'm going to cut 4 on this one.
It's only where you seam it that you want to cut
Just
off.
yeah, just re-seam it. So what I'm doing is just cutting down the centers of the stitch row. And then the next piece that we put in, I'll do the same thing. And so when we bring each piece together, it's like we're putting it back together again.
You want to maintain the same spacing, basically,
Yes.
between the stitches. That's what's going to give you the proper amount of material. So you don't have too much grass, you don't have too little.
All right, that's trash. So this side I'm not too worried about because when we lay this in and we fit it in place, sometimes things won't be square. So if we rely on that straight edge like we cut here to fit in here, most of the time it doesn't work. So I'm going to cut it from on the brick and cut that to fit. So that way, if we cut over the stitch rows, we're still going to have a straight line. Okay, so this is the first piece we're going to work on right now. Nailing, we like to put nails like usually like every 3 to 4 feet. On the perimeter, we're going to go every 3 to 4 inches. Very close on the perimeter because we don't want it peeling up. So what I'm going to do is set a row of nails, and I'm going to stretch it out the other end. So we're going to tack them in. When it's warmer, the grass will get a little bit more loose, and it's easier to work with. It contracts and it expands. I've secured this end. I'm going to tighten this up, and if I can get a guy, I got another hammer in here, but I'll need another guy behind me. So I'm going to stretch this forward, and then we're going to set this row. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to kick it again, and then we're going to set the next row, and we're just going to tighten this thing out. We only stretch it one way. If we stretch it to the sides, our seam is then going to go like this. So we want to go front or back. It can be either way. So I can either stretch it this way or stretch it this way. With the grain being this way, it's a little bit easier for me to see what I'm doing. So
So having a meat kicker or a carpet stretcher, it makes your job a lot easier. You can stretch this a whole lot easier.
okay. So let's set a row in here. And don't bury them in yet. So we're just marking the irrigation line so we don't puncture it with anything else.
So what Clint was saying is you do the nails about every 3 or 4 feet, and then secure them down. You don't need any more than that, especially out here where it gets so hot.
You use galvanized so they expand and lock in?
Okay, so you can use galvanized or you can use regular.
Right.
If you use regular, they're going to swell when they rust.
Right.
It makes it really hard to take out. Galvanized is not going to rust.
Okay.
So it's
Steel's
whichever
better?
way, yeah, whichever way you
Stretch it
prefer.
again.
Okay.
One thing I like to do when this is cut on the edge here, one thing I like to do is nail from the outside, because I can come in and toenail it. If this was cut to the edge, I come in at an angle like this, and then I pull it, and then set it. And what it does is it tightens up that grass as well. So if I come in, most guys like to sit on the turf because it's nice and cushy, but what happens is when they go to nail this, and they put it in, you'll get a bubble up right here because you're nailing at this angle. Just naturally, you're gonna come in at that angle. So it's always good to nail from the outside. There's many different techniques. There's not one way to do a seam. There's different ways. If there's a commercial application, you're gonna do it one way. If you're gonna do it residential, you're gonna do it some other ways. The common method that mostly everybody does is the stapling effect, where you're just stapling your seam together with our square head staples, not the round head, the round bend staples for the irrigation drip lines. You don't want to use those. So you want to use a square head, and that sits in real nice. And once again, like the perimeter, you want to go every 3 to 4 inches because you don't want the seam opening up. Another way is also doing it with just nails. You can just use nails and do a zigzag nailing effect where you're nailing right to that edge of each piece of grass and do a zigzag. That goes very well because sometimes your base is really, really hard and you can't get these staples in, and the staples bend, and you're just fighting. So you can come in with just nails.
How close to the edge are the nails?
Every 3 to 4 inches.
But they're,
It's-
how far from the seam?
Right to the edge of the
Right
seam.
to the edge,
Yeah,
okay.
right to the edge. If you go a little bit farther out, when you brush the sand in, the sand goes underneath between the grasses and it comes up. Another technique, I brought my easy seam machine. Basically, it's a microwave. What we do is we roll this tape out. On the back, there's like a aluminum foil. Like I said, it's a microwave. So what we're doing is laying this under the grass, and then we lay the microwave on top. It never gets hot, so what it's doing is sending microwaves through the turf off and bounces off the aluminum, and then just like if your kids ever threw a spoon in the bowl and reheated something in the microwave, it starts going crazy. Comes with this little tool. Sometimes you get snow blind and you don't know where your seam's at or where the tape's at. So it's a little guide to keep you straight. Want to make sure those grass fibers are not getting cut down. Okay, we plug it in, it's going. It doesn't mean it's working. What it means is it's just the fan's on, it's ready to go, and then there's a power button. As soon as I hit that power button, we're gonna be shooting some microwaves. There's a T, an L, M, H. Obviously low, medium, high. The T, say we just got to this point, you know, we were working this way, and we just got to the end here, but we're, 6 inches short. Well, I don't want to reheat something I just reheated and it's really hot. So I can hit the T, and the T is going to work between here. And so what I'll do is I can turn it and make sure the arrow is in the center, and I can heat that edge right in there. So green light goes on. Now it's going. When that green light goes off, we're done. Okay, we're done. So we'll slide this up. And there's my marker. So I like to take this behind it and push the glue, because the back of the turf has these ridges of all those stitch rows. So we're trying to get that glue tape to hit in between the stitch rows. So I like to come in and just at least push on it. It's kind of a carpet tool. If you get a double blinking green light, it means there's something wrong. You do not want to have any nails nearby, especially underneath. You can fry the machine that way. Try to find the center of that seam, which is pretty hard now. Okay, so I'll come in on one side, and we're going to do kind of the zigzag. Now, this was as if we didn't have any of the tape. So I wouldn't be going this close together. So I like to get a row going first. That way I know visually like how my spacing is. So you can either do your whole seam like this, and if you're a good nailer, it goes pretty quick. Okay, so I'll come in. Once I do a couple of them where I'm sitting, I can work as far as I can reach, and then set them, and then I'll slide down, and then work as far as I can reach. And then I'll come back in, open up the grass blades. Okay, so we're working very prominently on this seam here. We want to be very careful with our nailing because we don't want to overbeat this. Because after we're done, we're going to just see like an area where that's, an area that's been overworked. So we want to be real, tender on this area. Set those nails very easily, and don't overbeat the nail or staple. I got to make sure I'm splitting both each side of the grass. So here's our staple method.
Now you guys notice Clint's always checking. He's checking the blades. He's checking the seam to make sure it looks good. You don't want to have blades that are caught underneath.
Yeah.
You use the seam tape. Do you use either the nails or the staples, or are you using all three no matter what, like you're doing?
No,
just
these are just different methods.
I can use either or.
Either or. Our seam's ready to go. Normally this is the time when I'll put two guys on a seam. They'll start seaming together. You put another guy, start making the cut around the perimeter, and then you maybe have 2 other guys sit in the next piece. Okay.
I've heard a couple guys all talk about putting a perimeter board in to nail to either Trex or
Yeah.
I think they have some others.
That-
That would be required on a commercial install, or that would be
Sometimes.
recommended?
Yeah, sometimes they'll put a header board, and if there's usually if there's hardscape around it, they put a 2x4 down. Then you come in and you drill out into the concrete, and then you set a screw down inside there. I've seen it where they wanted that, and then metal stakes every 18 inches on center, and then an epoxy across the top of the board, and staple the turf down onto the board. So
With
it's
galvanized
overkill.
staples, usually.
Yeah. The old installation methods back, I've been in this since 2004. Back when, before it was popular, that was one of the methods they were using. Because these nails really didn't exist then to use them in the turf installation process. And now that these have come in, we can nail it every 3 to 4 inches. And when you do that, you're not going to get this edge out. You can go back to a job and think that you can grab the corner and peel it out and it'll just rip out. You have to back your truck in, hook it to your truck and drive it out. Okay, most of the time it's going to tear before it just comes loose. So that's the nice thing about these nails. They tend to rust a little bit, and when they do, they bite into the base and you can't slide those nails back out again.
If you have severe sloping and mounds, do you have to cut the turf at all to keep from wrinkling?
Yeah, the turf's not going to lay in the valleys really nice over something that's real hilly. So you've got to relieve those cuts and overlap them, and then trim those out. So you got to tailor it. If you make mistakes on the turf, it's really easy to fix. You can come in and cut it out. You know, if you had a little fire pit sitting over here, and someone drops something really hot, it'll melt the grass. That's okay, because you can come in and cut the square out, pop it loose, put a new piece in, you'll never know the difference. So you can patch it really, really nice, just like the seam. You know, we can make this thing invisible if you do it properly. So with if you have some extra on the job, you want to leave it with the customer for any future repairs. Window reflection, if they have those new dual pane vinyl windows, any west, southwest facing homes, the windows reflect heat from penetrating through the inside of the house. When they do that, they magnify the temperature of the heat coming off of that window. So most likely when the sunlight's up above and you've got the window down on the side, you're getting a bounce off of the window, but when it does that, it magnifies the heat temperature off that window, just like a magnifying glass. So that area that might be underneath the turf will get, it'll melt it. It doesn't combust, turf just melts, and it doesn't get it liquidy, it just hardens. So if it does happen, it's not like it's an emergency where the kid's gonna touch it, it's gonna get on them and burn their hand. The way to control that is you have to have a good bulletproof warranty. Explain to the customer. In our brochures, you look on the back, there's 3 things that, you can call it cons of artificial turf. Turf gets hot, turf can smell from pets, and turf can melt. So there's solutions to each of those. We've now developed turf that doesn't get as hot, but we also developed products where the turf can actually be controlled when dogs urinate in it, so that the odor doesn't get really, really bad where you smell it. It can be cleaned. We have certain solutions and cleaners that we can use to clean the grass. And then also with turf melting, you've got to explain that to the customer, or at least have it in your warranty, and let them know that it can happen. If later on you decided to change the window out to a nice low E dual pane window, you might have this area over here melt. So the way to control that is you can have the window tint applied to the outside of the window. There's a good product, 3M, that you might have heard. You can have a professional tint guy come over to the house and put that product on the window, and that helps control the heat reflection coming off that window. Turf can start melting up to like 175 degrees. So you'd be amazed that those windows actually do that. it puts off a lot of heat.
I mean, it happens, it's rare, but
We can't control that. It is not in the warranty. We do not warranty that stuff because we cannot control the right time of the day, the right time of the year, and the right time that window does that.
So if you suspect that could happen, it's a good idea to keep some remnants, because once they fix the window,
Yeah.
you can cut it out and replace that piece and it's fine. But it's better if you have a piece of the same turf, because then it'll match exactly.
If you've got cloudy, 30-degree weather, is it recommended not to install it that day?
Let him answer that.
Probably. The repercussion you have with like installing on a cold day, the client might call you back on a warm day because the contraction and expansion. When it's cold, that grass is tight and really hard to work with.
Especially putting green too.
Especially putting greens. Putting greens, yeah, I'd say hold off. But when it gets warmer, what happens is you might have some bubbling happening because it's getting hot and it's expanding. When that happens, you can come back in with some more nails and seat those bubbles down. So you can add some more nails into that. So if it's really cold out, probably wait till a warmer day. That's the reason we also use sand infill. Its purpose is to keep the blade standing up. When you've got sand filled between the blades, it won't want to go back down again. And then also you get a little bit of weight down on the turf.
Okay, so now we're done with the turf portion. We've cut everything in, everything's looking good, but now it's time to infill that product. And what we use is we use a silica sand. For putting greens, we use a real fine grit, so it gets down in that fiber real good. And for the landscape, the synthetic lawns, we use a 16 grit. So we have a few different infills available here at Global Synturf. One is our Superfill, which handles any type of mold or mildew or any type of thing like that. It's actually built into our sand. It's a great product for heavy, little bit more moisture areas. And then we have a regular silica that we use, either a 30 or 16 grit. And then we also have our new flying out the doors. It's called our Zeolite. Our Zeolite product, it's our Zeofill, and it has zeolite in it. And what that does is it takes the odors from pets that could be stored in the turf. It actually takes that away. Okay, so now we've got the turf laid. It's time for that infill that we spoke about. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put that sand in drop spreaders, and we're gonna drop that sand evenly throughout the whole area. It's recommended anywhere, depending if it's a synthetic lawn, it could be anywhere from 1 pound to 2 pounds per square foot. For putting greens, if you want it set at the industry standard around 10 on the stemp meter, we're gonna go ahead and place that at 2 pounds per square foot of silica sand. The next step is obviously brooming and working that sand into the fiber so it goes all the way to the backing. So for all of you contractors and landscapers out there that are afraid to put a little meat behind it and push a broom, you can go ahead and use the cheater's way and use that power broom to go ahead and work that sand in. And then the finishing step with us is we take the power washer, we go against grain, stand those fibers up nice and work all that sand to the bottom. So it gives it a complete finished look, obviously, when you're completed. So now we're done power washing, we're done making that area look absolutely beautiful, and now we're all done with this installation.